array of programs and opportunities for study and research.
International students who have come to UNI have gone on to do really great things. Students who came to study here and went on to PhD programs, and they're now faculty members in the United States. And sometimes people return home and find great success back in their home country.
Our faculty are very committed to helping every student reach not just their educational goals, but also their professional and their personal life goals. They provide a really strong and robust, challenging academic program for the students, but are there to make sure that the student understands the material and is really grasping it and moving on in their education.
There are more than 270 student organizations to take part in, and the cities of Cedar Falls and Waterloo offer parks, trails, restaurants, shops, events, and international markets that allow students to experience urban life in a safe, small city setting. UNI students are just a few hours from some of the largest cities in the Midwest, including Des Moines, Minneapolis, Chicago, Kansas City, and St. Louis.
Iowa has this sense of community. The people here are nice, and there's a lot of value on families. I live close to campus, and I can just walk to school anytime. I can just easily access school, and so I love that about.
All right, good morning, everyone. I think some people have already joined, so let's wait maybe 1 or 2 minutes for others to join in, and then we'll start. All right, can everybody see the PowerPoint slide? Okay, so good morning again for those of you who just joined a few minutes ago. This is our second day of the workshop, and I'm just going to go over the program here. So today we will have the first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Yosef Bayena. He will be talking about the details of grant writing, and then Dr. Yoalim will talk about institutional grant management, and then Dr. Tesfaye Wibe will be discussing networking and developing integrated research from his experience. And probably Dr. Shebgao, he's in Ethiopia now. He probably will join us as well. And then we'll have a Q&A session. Again, please send your questions if you have any through the Q&A tab in your Zoom. If you are following on YouTube, you can email questions as well, and we'll try to summarize those and get back to you as soon as we can. And then finally, we'll have just a short closing remark. And I will also request you later on to kind of do a survey that we will send by email. All right. So the first thing I want to remind you again, we have a lot of people attending, so probably speaking would not be very easy. So again, send your questions. Probably if we have time later on and not a lot of people are speaking, we might allow a lot of, a few people to kind of speak using a microphone. Again, send your questions through this email if you are attending on YouTube. But others on Zoom, you can send your questions through the Q&A tab. With that, I am gonna let Yosef to start his presentation. Yosef?
አቤት አለው ይሰማል?
Yeah, yes, I'm gonna stop my sharing so you can proceed.
Okay, thank you. Let me check my audio. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay, let me share. And can you also see my slides?
Yes.
Yes.
We see that they have to, I think, acknowledge from there. If they could, yes, I think they say they can see it.
Yeah, they can? Okay, perfect.
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
እንደምን አደራችሁ፣ እንደምን አረፈዳችሁ፣ እንደምን ዋላችሁ፣ እንደያላችሁበት ቦታ እየጀምራለሁ። ያው ተጻፈው በእንግሊዝኛ ስለሆነ ስላይዶቹ የግድ ወደ እንግሊዝኛ እንመለሳለን ማለት ነው። Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Beyena. I work here in Canada at a university called McMaster University. Formerly, my department used to be called Clinical Epidemiology and Biostatistics. By training, I am. There is echo. Somebody needs to be muted. Is there anyone who is not on mute? Hello? Okay.
I fixed it for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. So my department formerly used to be called Clinical Epidemiology and Biostatistics. I am myself a biostatistician by training. A few years ago, we changed our name into this long name that you see at the bottom: Health, Research, Methods, Evidence, and Impact. How fitting is that we're going to be talking about research, and if we do research, we need good methodology, we need to generate evidence, solid evidence, and we want that evidence to have impact on society, community. So I was not happy when the name changed a few years ago because I wanted biostatistics to stay in the name. But now when I think of it, it's probably not a bad idea to have a name like this to sell yourself. Okay, so yesterday, Professor Tesfaye covered very important aspects of grant writing. Today, I'm tasked with sharing some specific components that should be included in a typical grant. I'm going to focus more on the NIH, the National Institutes of Health expectation. Although the ideas can be transferred to other agencies, you have to always abide by what these other agencies expect from you. So components of grant proposal. There is something that maybe Rick can help me. These buttons are covering my slide. What should I do? Like the zoom thing, mute, stop video is on top of my slide. Rick, do you know what I should be doing?
We do not see that here, so you should be okay.
You can move them. You should
Okay.
move them if you can.
Is there a way to hide them?
You can move them, can't you?
Let me try. It's annoying. Oops. No. Bear with me, please. Sorry, guys. There is a way to.
Yeah, those, I think the ones at the top, you probably can't move them. Are they in the top, the green and the something view option?
Yeah, it's on the top, and
I mean, we can see the slides. You're okay.
yeah, but it's covering like the top.
That we don't see, for us, we don't see that the top is covered. We see the slide with no issues. So you're the only one that would see the slide covered at the top.
Okay. Probably I have another screen that I can see without those. So if you see me doing this, unfortunately, that's the reason. So, okay, so I'll continue. I have another screen. Okay, so just to remind, as I said, Tesfaye has covered quite a lot yesterday. I just want to highlight one more time, just this big reminder that you see on this page is, before you start writing your proposal, you must reread, and reread again the guidelines, the instructions that is provided by that specific funding agencies that you're planning to apply to. Different agencies use different names for the call. Some just call it call for proposal. NIH tends to use, for many of their grants, FOA, funding opportunity announcement, program announcement, request for application, and so on and so forth. If you are unclear about the instructions, it's always a great idea to contact program officers to seek clarification. Okay. So grant in a nutshell, before I go into the components, you can think of a grant, any grant, as a series of questions that you must address. These are the big, like a journalist, the big W's and the how. So what are you planning to do? What's the proposal about? What's the question about? Why is it important? Why is it significant? What will you do specifically? And then the key one is how will then you do that? Why are you the best person to do it? How much will it cost? Why will it cost the cost that you are going to be asking? So these are a series of questions you have to always reflect. So if you could find a reasonable answer to this question, your proposal would be in a much better form. So here is what I was given to talk about, components of grant proposal. There's a big list. I am going to go in a bit of detail in some of them, and others I might just talk about them without giving you too much detail. So it's a long list, as you can see it on this slide. Ideally, for something like this, it would have been nice to have a sample proposal, a successful proposal, I should say, and just go step by step and dissect each one of these components to see what made that successful grant different from those that have not been successful. That would have been the ideal approach. To do something like that would require a long time. So if we have a full day together in a small group, ideally, we could sit down and go through the successful grant and check as a checklist of these items, these components. For obvious reason, we're not going to be doing that. I would just go through the principles, but I would encourage you to go to this website, NIH website. I remember Tesfaye also gave you yesterday, the same site. They have few successful applications on this site that will cover those components. And at your own pace and your own time, if you could go to this website, get one or two of them and read them, that will be a great investment of your time. Because today I'm not gonna give you a sample proposal because I have a short time to cover quite a few stuff. Okay, let's start with the first one, project summary, A. It's supposed to be a concise description of the aims and procedures for your proposal. Generally, it's written in lay terms generally, but also the scientific community to which you are proposing should appreciate it. It could be used for press release, and it's often placed in databases to indicate taxpayers' money is well spent. Because remember, all these funding agencies, most of them, especially government agencies, are funded by taxpayers. So they want to showcase what type of proposals have been funded and how their money was invested. So this abstract should not be very technical, just the key parts should be covered. And it's not long, usually about 200 to 400 words. You have to, once again, follow instructions about the exact length of the abstract or the project summary. So that's a very small part. Let's move to B, project narrative. That's even shorter. What does it entail? It should address the relevance of the proposal to research, or the proposal research, I should say, to public health. So NIH is all about health. So the focus is this really relevant to public health? You have to make a point. And unfortunately, you don't have much space to write, usually two to three sentences. And this one in particular should be written in plain language that can be understood by a lay audience. So those two, the first two are very short. And we're going to go into other sections, other component of the proposal that will require more work. Next, that is specific aims. So this to me is like you think of like first impression when you want to impress somebody or your boss, or in this case, the reviewer. So you are going to be writing and you'll be reviewed. So those reviewers must be impressed. And this is your first opportunity, the specific aims. What the NIH says is this is just word for word what the National Institute of Health asks you to do for the specific aim component. It says, state concisely the goals of the proposed research and summarize the expected outcome or outcomes, including the impact that the results of the proposed research will exert on the research field involved. So some of the key parts are underlined here. List succinctly. So remember this concise, succinct. You don't have much space to talk at length, in a very brief, succinct way. The specific objectives of the research proposed, for example, to test a stated hypothesis, create some novel design, solve a specific problem, and so on and so forth. And all this has to be done within one page. So imagine how difficult that could be to do all of this in one single page. So everyone will tell you this is the most important part of a grant application, especially in the NIH, for the NIH grants. And it will help you gain the reviewer's trust and confidence if you do it well, while you are simultaneously convincing them that you are proposing a very important work and they have to fund it. So again, it's really your task now to impress those reviewers and just get so that they get excited and say, this is a grant that I want to be funded. This is your roadmap, if you will, a short version of the full grant. So the full grant could be long, depending on the type of grant, could be 6-page, 12-page, 25 pages. So there are all types of grants in the NIH ecosystem. And the specific aim is that roadmap that will allow you to summarize everything or the shorter form of the full grant. And also, because it's a short document, it's ideal to get feedback from your mentors and colleagues. So if you send me a 25-page document, well, first, takes me to read 75 pages. It takes me a long time. So I may be delayed, or I may not be even read it carefully. But if you send me one page, I'm more likely to read it carefully and provide you feedback. So it's a great document. And for the same reason, reviewers will read it carefully, more than any other part. In fact, Professor Tesfaye was telling you about how reviews are done in the NIH system. He was telling you, typically 3 people will read you every document or every proposal. But in that panel, in the study section, there will be 20, 25 members. But the 3 will read most of it. The rest will come, most likely, maybe they read your specific aims. And they will have equal vote in the scoring. Think about it. So if you do a good job in the specific aims, even those other people who are not assigned to your particular grant will, when they vote, they will give you favorable score. Because it's so short, it's one of the most difficult sections to write. It's short, and also it's supposed to contain so many key components of a proposal. And you must include specific aims, usually 2 to 4, no more than 4. Maybe, I think 3 would be a good balance, a happy medium number. This is a bit crowded. By the way, you're gonna have a copy of our slides, so we'll send those to you. So don't worry about it at this time. Just to highlight some of the key components within the specific aims. You could think of, writing 4 paragraphs. So different colors here. Can somebody confirm if they see my cursor when I move it? Can you see?
Yes,
Yeah.
we do.
Thank you very much, because that will help sometimes to do that. We miss the pointer now, right? The laser pointer. So yeah, so here the opening paragraph. Oops, the opening paragraph is supposed to help you write what the research problem is all about and why should we care? What is the state of knowledge like in that specific problem that you are to address? So the current, what do we know right now? And what are the gaps? What remain to be explored? And what's a critical need? So if you could kind of package this into one paragraph, that would be a good start. And then the next here in blue is the who, what, why. So you are supposed to talk about your overarching long-term goal. What are the main objectives? The main objectives and central hypothesis, and also the rationale for doing what you plan to do. Further along, the third paragraph should now specify specific aims, as I said earlier, 2 to 4 aims. And within each aim, some of them should have, in most grants anyway, some testable hypothesis. You have to hypothesize. I want to show this. I want to demonstrate this. And some supporting details should be given. And how you do it is also here, included in the third paragraph. And finally, you close that specific aim with the payoff. Okay, what do we expect to get from it? Yesterday, we had some discussion about similarities and differences between outcomes and impact, and you have to write it. So what is the expected outcome? What is the payoff for investing in this proposal? And the impact, as we discussed, is more of the long-term implications to different stakeholders. Could be to patients, could be to policy makers, depending on what the type of research. You have to think of the impact your research will have in the long term and in a broader context. Okay, so that's in a nutshell that what the specific aim component is supposed to contain. There are common errors that I'll just highlight some of them here. Unrealistic aims. So sometimes, we could write something that, reviewer will see, doesn't look real, So just it's a fine line always. You have to balance a poorly justified aim. You have to justify those aims. Poorly descriptive. Sometimes unnecessarily complicated, hard to understand. And lack of cohesiveness in the aims. If you are jumping from one aim to another, they are not connected at all. That is a red flag. Another common error is excessive interdependence of the aims. So imagine if you have 4 aims. If aim 4 heavily depends on aim 3, and something goes wrong with aim 3, then aim 4 will go as well. So the interdependence should not be excessive. There has to be cohesiveness. There should be a flow, but the interdependence should be minimal. That means if one doesn't succeed, the other will have a chance of succeeding. Okay, so that is specific aim. Now let's move to research strategy, another very important component in a grant writing. So in a research strategy, you are supposed to highlight, describe what significance, innovation, approaches, investigators. This all make the research strategy section strong if you write them properly. The following, like preliminary studies for new applications or progress report for renewal revision, could be included as appropriate. So if you are applying a grant for the first time, and if you have some pilot data that you have generated, or if you have done a little bit of work just to demonstrate, to convince the reviewers, look, I know, I have some idea how to do it. Look, it's not the entire study, obviously, but I've come along this far. So if you give me this money, you can say, I am the guy, I am the person to do it. So those are also useful. Depending on the type of application, there are different number of page limits. Again, the key is to follow instructions. So Professor Tesfaye was discussing a little bit about what is called R01. That's a big research grant in the NIH system that typically will be about 12 pages. There are smaller grants, around 6. And there are, for example, capacity building, global capacity building grants. They could go up to 25 pages. I mean, altogether, not necessarily the research part. So take a look at the instruction to make sure that you are within the limits that you are allowed. Just to summarize the research strategy on the bottom, these are the 3 ones: the significance, the innovation, and the approach. And if you could map them back to the specific aim component that we discussed, the significance is supposed to highlight, why are we doing it? What will it mean? The innovation is supposed to stress what's new and different from somebody else's work. And the approach is how we plan to do it. So let me say a few more of each of these key elements. In the significance part, briefly sketch why the proposed research is significant. Identify gaps in current knowledge or practice which the project that you are proposing intends to address. Does it address an important problem or critical barrier to progress in the field? So these are the keywords that you have to always keep in mind. Is there any barrier in the field that you are working in? And then you are going to come and say, I'm going to address this. So that will be very significant. The aim of the projects are achieved. How will, for example, scientific knowledge, technical capability, and or clinical practice be improved? Again, always you have to relate it to your own discipline to articulate these key elements: scientific knowledge, technical capability, practice. So it doesn't not necessarily have to be clinical practice, any other practice. If you are in education, how would that improve, your educational activities, whether in teaching or other activities. How will successful completion of the projects change concepts, technologies, treatments, preventative interventions? I mean, this is health, so most of the terminologies relate to health, but you can imagine, you can just find a parallel in your own discipline to think of the importance of articulating such things so that people will appreciate this is indeed significant. So this is all about significance. State briefly the importance and health relevance of the proposed research by relating it back to the specific aims and also to the overarching, the broader long-term objectives. Now, again, just a few common errors when you think of this. Too little detail. Sometimes just people write maybe one sentence and reviewers will not be excited. You have to write a bit more. But at the same time, you don't want to take pages and pages to write about this is significant in this way. It's challenging. Trust me, we all find it difficult. And it's a constant battle. How to balance? Too little? One person says that's too little, the other could say too much. So you have to try to find a balance and try to convince the reviewers. Poor organization, that's very common. So the organization, how you present it is also very important. And lack of objectivity. You have to try to be as objective as possible, because if you write something that is so subjective, then some reviewers could be annoyed. Well, this guy is, full of himself or herself, that, he's dismissing other people's contribution. So again, be gracious, recognize other people's work, and then after doing that, bring your own ideas and just to highlight, try to highlight why you think your proposal is significant without dismissing others. So that was about the significance part. Now let's move on to the innovation. This is something that we discussed a bit yesterday, so I'll go over it again today. So when it comes to innovation, the idea is, does this proposal challenge and try to shift current research or practice paradigm? So it's more of like, is there a paradigm shift? For example, using novel theoretical concepts, it could be in the approaches and methodologies, instruments that you use, or interventions, whether it's medical intervention or educational intervention, or any intervention, or agricultural intervention, depending on engineering intervention. So really, as I said many times now, everything that we discussed today can be used in a much broader context if we try to find similar concepts in our own field. Are the concepts and other issues that we discussed here, are they novel in only one field of research or in a broader sense? That's a very important consideration. Does the current proposal include refinement, improvement, or new applications of theoretical concepts, approaches, and methodologies? So it could be a refinement, could be an improvement, or is it just completely new application of something that exists? Remember, innovation is challenging or difficult when you think about innovation. In the usual sense of the term, innovation refers to studying something previously unknown or unexplored, or developing some groundbreaking stuff. Well, the reality is such breakthroughs are unusual. For example, the discovery of penicillin many, many years ago was a breakthrough. How often does that happen? Well, it does not. I mean, think about the COVID pandemic. COVID came and there was some very interesting innovation. So, for example, the vaccines that use mRNA, messenger RNA, Pfizer and Moderna. Those are new. Those are innovative. No one before that, as far as I know, used that approach to produce vaccines. So sometimes it happens, but generally it doesn't. So you don't have to really be obsessed so much by this stronger notion of innovation, because we know most progress in science is slow and methodical and not innovative in that sense. So still, we can try to put it in a different context. So a proposal can be innovative in different other ways. For example, a question that's highly studied, but not previously asked by others. So there is this issue that so many people study, but the question that you are asking has not been asked before by anybody. That could be innovative. Or an overall hypothesis of project could be innovative if you pose a new theoretical question that others have not considered. Similarly, if you try to combine some old concepts in a new way, that may be considered, oh, that's innovative. Or your approach could be an innovative strategy using standard methods. So you take an old method, but the way you approach it could be innovative. Lastly, take an old method and you apply it to a new problem. So an old statistical method can be applied in new application. So if there is a methodology that's well known in ecology, if I bring that statistical approach and apply it in genomics, that's innovative. So innovation can be interpreted in many ways. So you don't have to create penicillin or come up with a groundbreaking COVID vaccine to be innovative. Now let's move to research. So I told you about significance. We just talked about innovation or innovativeness, and now approach. This is by far the most important part. I remember Professor Tesfaye also highlighted this fact. This is the most important of the research strategy. In the old days, it used to be referred as research design and methods, but now it's just called approach. You are supposed to describe the research design, a conceptual and clinical framework, procedures and analysis to be used in order to fulfill what you set to accomplish in the project specific aims. Remember, in the specific aims, we said we have this and this. How would you accomplish them? Indicate how data will be collected. So there is a data collection element, analysis, interpretation, data sharing plans. All of this is part of the approach. Describe any new methodology and its advantages over existing techniques. So if you are going to be using new methodology, just don't say, I will use this fancy methodology, this fancy statistical analysis. You have to say something about why you choose it over standard techniques. You say, oh, standard techniques are not able, or are not good enough because of my data, So therefore, I am going to be using this new methodology. So this is very important to highlight. We're supposed to describe any novel concept and approach, tools, if you are using, or technologies. Also, there is always in anything we do, potential challenges and difficulties, limitations. This is something that has come up yesterday as well. And always think of alternative approaches, mitigation strategies to circumvent such limitations where feasible. It's also important, I'll show you maybe if I have time towards the end, one or two examples of timetable. Timetable is important. It shows that you have given the proposal sufficient thought and reflection, and you have mapped what will be done, when, and by who. So that timetable is important. If any procedures, situation, or matter that may be hazardous to personnel, if there is something like hazardous, you are supposed to point them out and describe what precautions you will put in place. Now let's point out some common errors in research and approaches, I mean. So sometimes lack of hypothesis and rationale, that could be a common error. If it is a situation that people expect, you have to have a hypothesis and rationale. And if you don't make it clear or completely doesn't exist, that's a red flag. Inadequate experience of the investigator. So here is the investigator. The investigator is important. Can they do it? It's one thing to say, this is great, I'm planning to do this, but then they will question, do you have the expertise? Do you have the experience? What is the track record like? Do you have a team, collaborators? So all these come into question. Excessive or lacking experimental detail. So sometimes too much or lacking. So again, as I said earlier, just find a balance. Depending on the question you are asking, for example, controls, if you want to do some comparison, people say, oh, what are your controls? How do we know your intervention will work better if I don't know that you are comparing it to what's called control? Inadequate detail on your clinical subjects or specimens or statistical power is very important. So I am a statistician. If your research has any quantitative data component, I would encourage you to work with a statistician from the beginning of your grant writing, from the beginning. That's the design phase. So that statistician will help you come up with a power calculation, will write a good analysis plan for you. And this is critical for the success of your proposal. Also, lack of potential pitfalls and alternative approaches. So this is a common error. It's not a criticism to say, we may face this challenge, but we have this alternative approach. So if plan A doesn't work, I will go into plan B. That's fine, that's life, right? So it's not gonna be criticized. So criticism will be if you skip this section. So always think of what could go wrong. Yeah. So there are more common errors in this section because this is, as I said, the most important part, the approach. Overly ambitious experimental plan. That's another challenge. Approaches are not hypothesis-driven. Dependence of the whole project on a single unproven premise. Be careful when you say, everything depends on something that you have not proved yet. The whole grant can fall apart. So think about this possibility and try to avoid that. Just like we said in the earlier, excessive interdependence of experimental plans, just like the aim. Remember, we talked about excessive interdependence of aims, similar in your experimental plan. Lack of interpretation of results, over-optimism is another challenge, and some lack of logistical organization and justification. So how everything is organized logistically and lacking justification also will be a red flag for reviewers. Okay, now moving on to next about the environment, facilities, equipment, and other resources. So this section is used to assess the adequacy of the organizational resources that are available to you for you to successfully perform the proposal that you are submitting. You must identify any facilities that will be used, could be laboratory, animal facilities, computer, office, and others in your institution, in the environment. As appropriate, indicate the capacities and capabilities of, and also proximity of these resources that are available to your project. So if it's on campus, on campus we have these facilities that are beneficial for my project. Continuing with the environment, you must only describe those resources that are relevant to your research. You don't need to just list everything that your university has or your department has for that matter. Only those that you think will be useful, will add value to your proposal. Provide information describing other resources available to the project, shops, electronics, again, to the extent which they would be available to the project. And address how the research environment, the whole research environment, will contribute to the probability of success of the proposed research. So this is very important. It's not just you could be a great researcher on your own, but being surrounded by other researchers in your department, in your faculty, in your university, wherever you are, is an added advantage, because you can always, exchange ideas, depending on the especially if you are a junior researcher, you could have a lot of mentors around you, and it's just the whole environment is conducive to promote research. So that's very important. Also, try to identify or note unique features or resources that would be there for you and contribute to success of the proposed research. This is not always common. Like some universities have some unique could be equipment or group teams that are not common in other settings. So you could highlight those to your advantage. Look, my university has this feature, this resource that no other university in our area has. So I will be taking advantage of these resources. As I said earlier, especially for an early stage investigator, you could describe the institutional investment on you. For example, startup funding. If you got course release, so you don't have to teach, and so on, in the success of your career. So I'm a new investigator, but my university or my research institute has invested in me in many ways, and that will help as well. In terms of equipment, you could list major items of equipment available for the project, together with where they are and their capabilities as appropriate. Okay, let's move along to budget and budget justification. So as you can see, it's a kind of a laundry list. I'm going through the list. Hopefully during the break, the discussion later, we can all, as a panel, we can, share our own experience in each one of these. There is always a happy experience and a frustrating experience we all go through. And I think it would be useful for all of us to discuss as a group later. So I'm just highlighting, as I said, the best thing for you now, just to recap, is to go to that website I gave you at the beginning, the NIH, where you can find a sample, the full application, and try to go through these items, these components, and see, what made them successful. How did they do it? And everything from there will make much more sense. Okay, budget. So now we have ideas. We have told them how great we are. We have our proposal, our ideas we think is significant. It's innovative. We have provided, in our view, excellent approach, statistical or otherwise. And we have also tried to get them excited about the environment we're in, the facilities and the resources that are available to us. And now comes to show me the money, the dollar. That's the budget. So budget and budget justification go together. You cannot request a budget without a justification. Impossible. You must justify every budget line that you request. So the budget contains estimated costs for the entire proposal period. So if it's a 5-year duration, you have to ask for the 5 year. If it's 2 years, likewise. So project cost must be allowable, allocable, reasonable, and consistent. This is very important. Again, going back to the instructions. So depending on the type of grant, there are some costs that are allowed and there are others that are not allowed. Some may allow you to buy a computer, others may not. Some may allow you to buy other, expensive equipment, others may not. So you must be careful in terms of what you ask and follow instructions. The budget is generally divided into, total direct costs and indirect costs. So the direct cost is supposed to be used to fulfill what you propose, the project. The indirect cost, sometimes it's called overhead, goes to your institution usually, and to cover for other costs that the institution has. That said, every expense should be justified. If your budget includes a sub-award to another institution, you have to make sure to include their budget and also the justification. Sub-award means, so if you are from the University of Gondar and you may have a key collaborator at Addis Ababa University, and you want some aspects be done by AAU, that you can have a sub-award with them, and you have to make sure that how much money goes to them, and you have to justify it as well. Pay special attention to the justification for some aspects like clerical and administrative expenses and some non-scientific equipment. So those are, can be scrutinized. So it could be red flag. So again, go back to the detail. If you are not sure, ask. It's always, there is help to ask. Go back to the program, say, I'm planning to, put a budget for this. Is this allowed? It's not very clear to me. So first is reading the instruction, the guideline. Even after reading and rereading, you might have some questions, lingering questions, and it's a good idea to go back to the program contact person and get clarifications. One thing that reviewers do not like to see is, significant over or underestimate. If you go excessive, again, everything now we have been doing this balancing. If you go too much, people say this investigator or investigators do not understand the scope of the work, because it should not take this much to do this job. Or even if you underestimate, again, that's a red flag. You just have no good idea of how much work is involved, how expensive things could be, and so on. So try to balance once again. Moving along to now biographical sketch. So this is related now to the investigator as well in a way. First thing for bio sketch, in short they are called bio sketch, use the format provided by the funding agency. Always, the funding agencies each agency have their own guideline and they update them regularly. So for example, NIH has its own format and it has explicit page limits. If you pass that page limit, the system will not allow it. So follow the format. Stay within the limits that you are allowed. And make sure you are using the most recent, the updated form. Because, for example, in NIH, 4 years ago, the biosketch, and now is different, or even maybe 2 years ago. People like Professor Tesfaye, who has a lot of experience in the NIH system, maybe could bring this issue again during our discussion later. So biosketch must be included for all senior or key personnel. Those include principal investigators, PIs. If there are co-PIs, co-principal investigators, key co-investigators, and significant contributors. Again, the NIH has really a wealth of information. So I have shown you here, as far as BioSketch goes, if you go to this website, you will see, samples, templates, and what they want to see. And also you need to check the frequently asked questions, FAQs, and look at their sample BioSketch as well. This is something that's not related to just the budget. Remember, I was talking about timeline. It's very important. I just added a couple of, examples. Here, for example, depending on your activity, if you have to develop a questionnaire, the time frame will be from months to, the first 3 months will be used to develop questionnaire. If you have to pilot instrument, recruitment, and so on, interviewing. So something like this will help reviewers to appreciate you have thought about what it takes, how long it takes, and so on. Another common way of putting timeline is something like this. You could divide it by, depending on how long your proposal lasts, by year, within a year by month, or by quarter, the first 3 months, and so on. So this is just a simple example that always try to add one of these in your proposal. It will make a difference. Wonderful. Now, the last ones, I'm not going to go into detail for each one of them. I just, as you can see, I put them in red here. The institutional commitment, data sharing and management plan, and support letter are all very important. I can only say that the institutional commitment can be very important for particular types of grants than others. For example, we have seen how the environment, the research environment, the facilities are useful in the earlier. But for particular grants such as capacity building, training related, the institution also must commit, I will facilitate this, I will do this. So the institution can write a strong, enthusiastic support to the investigators to show that they are behind, they are supporting. Data sharing and management plan, again, maybe Professor Tesfaye will say more later. This, it's common in some of the grants, maybe not in all of them, but this is an important aspect of NIH and probably other agencies as well. Support letter is also important. You don't want just to get 100 support letters from everyone you know. Again, just like the budget, you have to justify. If you have a support letter, whoever is writing that support letter has to have a clear idea why they are writing that letter to you. In what aspect? Remember, we talked about the various components. Which component would that person writing the support letter help? Is it from the approach part, for example, some collaborator who would help you in recruitment? I don't know. Again, maybe it would be better for us to discuss it in detail later. But letters are important. They should not be excessive. Few letters are useful, and they have to be justified. The role of the letter has to be clear. Now, yesterday there was a question about what does the review criteria look like. So now we discussed about the various components. Now for different agencies, they have different approach in the way they assess proposals and score proposals and rank proposals. I'm going to just take the next few minutes to discuss the NIH criteria, because most of the things that I discussed today relate to the NIH. So there are 5 review criteria, and you see them here in bold. So we discussed all of them. So significance, the relevance to human health and disease, that's significance to the institution, the agency, the National Institute of Health, is there to advance human health. So they want to see a clear significance. You will be scored on this criteria. The innovation part, we discussed about innovation. Said it's not easy to think of innovation. It's not groundbreaking, but be smart and try to come up with a way just that shows there is something unique about your proposal that others have not done. The approach, by far, the most important one is approach, the research approach, how you do it, the design, the analysis, the interpretation, all of that. So the feasibility of your methods, will it answer the aims? So it has to go back to the aims. That aim, you have 2 to 4 aims. For each aim, you have to be clear how you will address them. That's the approach. The investigator. Now, especially the principal investigator will be scrutinized. Do they have the appropriate training and experience, track record, publication? So all it's like, it's a circle. So if you have a good track record, you're more likely to get a high score in the investigator. Maybe this question will, the question that someone asked yesterday, does someone who has published a lot, does that mean he or she will be always successful in grant? I think there was a question in the chat yesterday. I think we probably touched it, discussed it as well. No, answer is no. You could have 1,000 papers. It doesn't mean necessarily every time you write a grant, you will be successful. But it will help. Having those papers will help you, but it's not a perfect predictor of success in grant writing, because grant writing is its own science and art. So if you do all of these things that we discussed properly, and of course you have the publication record, that's ideal, but just having a list of publication or success in publication doesn't necessarily mean success in grant writing, but it will help. And the environment. These are the 5 that reviewers will score. And there is what's called overall impact. So again, impact, this word has come along a lot of times in our discussion. The specific aims, we have seen it. And when they score, the reviewer will say overall, just how do they feel? So in some way, it's kind of synthesis, integration of the 5 criteria. So the 5 criteria are the ones that I showed you in the previous slide. And then the reviewers will come with an overall impact score and give you a score from 1 to 9. 1 being excellent or the top, the desirable score. 9 means the worst. So from 1 to 9. So the overall impact or the overall score is supposed to tell us the likelihood for a project to exert a sustained, powerful influence on the research field involved in consideration of this criteria. So it's just the likelihood of your project. How likely is for your proposal or project to have a sustained and powerful influence in that field that you are dealing with? Just to relate them to where this criteria should be highlighted or aligned, you can see this here, for example, the significance criteria. Where in application is this aligned? In the abstract narrative. You should see that. In the aims, the specific aims, we should see the significance. Again, we have seen it. In the research strategy. Remember, the research strategy includes significance, innovation, approach. We see it here. How about the investigators? Where do we get information about them? In the biosketch, the personal statement, contribution to science. I did not give you the sample, but if you go to that website and open the NIH, you will see what is personal statement mean, contribution to science mean. And also in the research strategy. So the investigators are also described in the research strategy specifically in the approach. So for example, if your proposal includes a very complicated data structure, you need a statistician, not just any statistician who is knowledgeable about your area. So for example, if we take genomics, Not all statisticians are familiar with issues in genomics. There are what are called statistical geneticists. So they focus on statistical issues in genetics. So you have to have someone, an investigator, involved in that part. So in the approach, when you write the approach, you have to say, Dr. X or whatever is responsible to do this. So the investigator will be looked at not only in their bioscape, but also in the research strategy. Moving along, innovation. Innovation comes in the aims, the specific aims, we have seen that. Also, it's one of the components in the research strategy. About approach, likewise, in the aims, specific aims, as well as in the research strategy. Finally, environment, we have seen that in the resources environment section. Okay, so I'm about to close. In summary, a proposal's main purpose is to convince a funding agency that it should provide money to support the implementation of your idea, to get them excited, to say, if I do this, first of all, it's aligned to your mission. So if it's NIH, you tell them this is about health, about human health. I'm going to improve such and such situations. So try to convince them by addressing these various components. I'm talking about just health, but if it's an agricultural research, you do the same. If it is research in engineering, that's your field, you know your field, and you should identify agencies that will fund and try to get to them and convince them you have everything, you have a great idea, significant idea, innovative idea, and you know how to approach it. All of that will help. Number two, the sections of a proposal can be thought of as providing answers to a series of critical questions. So this is just what I showed you earlier, a series of, Ws. What is the project about? Why is it important? What will you plan to do? That's those specific aims. And then the key part, how will you do it, the approach? What will it cost and why, the budget? Why are you the best one to do it? You, the investigator. So these are the questions you have to keep in mind. Final summary page. Funding agencies usually provide instructions, guidelines regarding what should be included in your proposal. And they also tell you some criteria upon which you will be assessed or evaluated. Just as I showed you a few minutes ago, what the NIH criteria entail. So those 5 criteria and then the overall. If you go to the National Science Foundation, they may have a different approach. In Canada, we talked about this yesterday as well, we have something called CIHR, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, which is like NIH. We have a slightly different way of scoring. We have something called NSERC, the National Sciences and Engineering Research Council. We have something different for that, and so on. And similarly for the social sciences, agriculture, and so on. Finally, this is the last advice. Instructions must be carefully read, not just once, reread, and then read again to ensure that you adhere to the requirement that these agencies expect from you. All of this, in terms of resource, my first resource is the World Wide Web. I affectionately call Google Professor. So if there is one professorship to be given, I think it should be given to Google. The last time I have been to physically a library, I don't remember now. The old days when I was a student, I used to walk to my science library or other libraries, get books, but now we can find all sorts of information that we need from home. So just some of them, like I listed them here, there's lots of tools and tips and tricks how to write grants. There are books. I remember Professor Tesfaye also showed you some books yesterday. These are the 2 books that I consulted. A great book, one specifically about NIH, Guide to Effective Grant Writing, and the other is Successful Grant Writing, again, Health and Human Service Professional. I know a week from today is our new year. I wish all of you happy Ethiopian New Year, Malkam Adisamet, and Kudatash. And I think that is where I will stop. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Yosef. So we will take maybe a 5-minute break, and then Dr. Yoram Abibi will probably go over some additional information on grant writing. So let's take a 5-minute break. That will be here. It's 10:10 Eastern time. So in about 15, whatever 15 past the hour. Okay, so let's meet 15 past your local time.
የአምላክ በረከቱ በኢትዮጵያ ትንሣኤ ዘመነ ሁለቱ ስትሰሙ መለከት ወደ ምስራቅ ተመልከቱ። አበባዬ ሆይ አበባዬ ሆይ ባልንጀሮቼ ቁሙ በተራ እንጨት ሰብሬ ቤት እስክሰራ እንኳን ቤትና የለኝም አጥር እደጃ ጥላለሁ ኮከብ ስቦጥ ወበል ማሲንቆ ወበል ክራር ዝፈን አገሬ ወበል ዋሽንቴ አንተ ማሲንቆ ስታይ ሰው ታርቆ እንኳን አደረሰ ለአዲስ ዘመን ዘመኑ ጀመር ነው ይታገል ለዓለም ለዓለም እንዳይለያየ ለዓለም ለዓለም እንዳይለያየ ዘላለም ስንቆራረብ ጠላት ይስቃል ያገር ሰርኳስ በማን ይደምቃል ስማ ስጠራ በዚህ ማሲፎ ይጥማዘን ሁሉም ሰው ታርቆ ወናናዬ 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 አበባዬ ሆይ አበባዬ ሆይ ባልንጀሮቼ ቁሙ በተራ እንጨት ሰብሬ ቤት እስክሰራ እንኳን ቤትና የለኝም አጥር እደጃ ጥላለሁ ኮከብ ስቦጥ ወበል ማሲንቆ ወበል ክራር ዝፈን
All right, thank you. Whoever started that music, that was great. So I think it's time to start. I hope most people are back. So our next speaker is Dr. Yohannem Abebe. So he will be talking a little bit about the National Science Foundation's proposal guidelines. Yohannem?
Yes. እሰማለሁ ልበል መጀመሪያ እስቲ
ላቆም ነው
ይሰማል ኦኬ
ይሰማል
ስሜ ዮሐnem አበበ እባላለሁ ብሪፍሊ በአማርኛ ለማስረዳት ሞክራለሁ ይሄ አጭር ውይይት ምን እንደሆነ በታስክ ወይም በአሳይመንት የወሰድኩት የኦፊስ ኦፍ ስፖንሰርድ ፕሮግራምስ ወይም ደግሞ ብዙዎቻችሁ በኩዌስችን ኤንድ አንሰር ቦታ የጠየቃችሁትን ጥያቄ መልስ የሚሰጥ ቢሮ አለ ግን በኢትዮጵያ ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች ውስጥ አትሊስት እኔ በኖርኩበት ዘመን አልነበረም ያ ቢሮና የቢሮውን አስፈላጊነትና ምናልባትም የዩኒቨርሲቲ በስራ በማስካሄድና በሊደርሺፕ በመሪነት ያላችሁ ሰዎች ካላችሁ ተሳታፊዎች ጉዳዩን አስባችሁበት እንድትለውጡት ነው ሌላው ደግሞ በተሳታፊነት ያላችሁ ሰዎች ይሄ ጉዳይ ምን ያህል ወሳኝ እንደሆነ ሄዳችሁ እንድታስረዱ ጭምር ነው ይሄንን ያመጣነውና ዋናው ስራ ይሄ ነው ስላይዶቹ የኔ ብቻ አይደሉም ከዶክተር ተስፋዬ መርሻ ጭምር ወስጄ ነው ሞዲፋይ ያረኳቸው ብዙዎቹን እንደ አዲስ የሰራኋቸው ቢሆንም ዋናው ነገር ፍሬምወርኩ ከሱ የወሰድኩት ስለሆነ እሱን ለማመሰግን ገባል የኔ ባክግራውንድ ባዮሎጂስት ነኝ ስለዚህ በእውነት ብዙ የተባለው የኤንአይኤች ጉዳይ አይመለከተኝም ብዙ ነገሩ ስለዚህ እንደናንተው አዳማጭ ነበርኩና ምንድነው ከኤንአይኤች ውጪ ያለ ነገር አለ ወይ ለሚለው ጥያቄ እኔን የሚመለከተኝ ብዙ ጊዜ ኤንኤስኤፍ ወይም ናሽናል ሳይንስ ፋውንዴሽን ላይ ስለሆነ ወደዛ ለመውሰድ ሞክራለሁ በተለይ ህክምናን ጤናን ያልተመለከተ ወይም ሌላ ምርምር ውስጥ ያላችሁ ሰዎች ለምሳሌ ትምህርት አካባቢ እርሻ እነዚህ አሁን environment education agriculture These are different units. You cannot apply to NIH. So the point is, where do you go? What do you do? Is the format different? So I'll just briefly go over that. So the next slide is on purely National Science Foundation. So if you submit a grant to National Science Foundation, the page limit is 15, and the first page, one page, is the project summary. It's exactly the same like in NIH. It is the most important page of your work. If you are not able to convince the reader on this page, that person will not read the remaining 14, because the person who is reading it could be me. I read every year grants for National Science Foundation. I serve on various panels. So if I see the summary is not good, I'm not going to waste my time reading 14 pages. So your project summary must be convincing, clean, and everything that it should be. So what does it mean? The criteria, the National Science Foundation has only 2 criteria that are critical. Don't forget, every aspect of the proposal must be excellent to get funded, but the 2 must be super. And these are the intellectual merit and the broader impact. Those are 2. And if you don't include these 2, clearly writing and stating what it is, the proposal will be returned without review. Listen, it will be returned without review. It will not be reviewed. They will just return it because it is incomplete. So you need to have intellectual merit and broader impact. What is intellectual merit? Is how good the science is. Because National Science Foundation, one thing it excludes 100% and rejects is health. If you include anything, any inclination of word health in it, it will reject it. Any application to health. But it funds fundamental research which has health implications. So, I mean, you can study cells, and you often study cells for medical reasons. Eventually, you would use the result for medicine. But if your research has direct application to medicine, their NSF will reject it. They will say, go to NIH. This is for fundamental research. The reason is, I think NIH used to get 35 billion. Probably by now it has grown further. I don't know how much it is now. But NSF is like close to 8 billion only. And the success rate for NSF is generally below 8%. Usually it's 8%. So 8% of the applicants get funded every year. 92% don't get funded. So you have to be super good to get actually funded. So they don't want any health-related project to come and compete. So health is completely excluded. So intellectual merit is what the science, how good the science is. How does it improve science? What gap does it address? Is it critical? That's basically what they look at, how good your science is. Now, the broader impact is how does it impact society? What is the broader implication of this in the society? Does it help underrepresented groups? What they call them underrepresented groups are the non-Caucasian groups. So Latinos, African Americans, and so on. There are groups they categorize in that area. So, or Native Americans. Does it help that group? Does it include education to the broader mass? How does it translate to training children? So if you have those areas, basically broader impact is how does the public benefit from your project? If you don't address this, as I said, you cannot basically move forward. The first thing you need to do is complete these 2. And you will focus every bit of your energy on these 2. Now, if you work on agriculture, environment, and so on, there are other things that you add. I don't know if this is really relevant in NIH, because you may note in some specific case, there is inclusion, or you need to include study area in the background. So you need to specifically address it. And what is really common and the most unspoken rule is you have to demonstrate that your methodology works by giving preliminary data. That means you must have already tested your methods. If you have not tested your methods and you propose, the question is, does it really work? How do you know? And they will question it. And remember, you are not there to defend it. It's a written document you submitted. If you haven't answered that you actually have tested it, then they are going to reject it. Oh, well, this method, I don't know if it works, and you are out. So you don't want that. So you make sure you test the methodology or show them you have used it. And that's the only way to overcome that issue. Another point is the projects, NSF projects are really generally 3 years. And there are at least a few I know that are 5 years, like career grants, excellence in research are 5 year. There are a few 5-year grants, but generally most grants are 3 years. Now, the question they are asking always is, how does this work continue and get sustained after the project is finished? So that's one of the areas you have to think. But there are other components as well. If you want to train students, you have to include the training component. You cannot just say, I'm going to train 10 students. You have to specifically show what these students do. They don't want your students to be lab cleaners. So they want to know what their projects they are working on and so on. So education is a key component of National Science Foundation. So when you write a project, please, if you want to be successful, make sure to include the students, PhD students, master students training in the program. And I think USDA primarily is in agriculture. As I said yesterday, I sent the link from the PEER. The PEER is a program, I think National Science Foundation, USDA, probably Department of Energy and so on. Those institutions are part of it. So please use it. It's a great opportunity. Most of the fundamental research people, that means non-medical people, can apply. Actually, if you want to do genome work, you can even apply this to the Department of Energy. So you're not far from health in that regard. So please use that opportunity. It's a very good opportunity to actually get funding from Ethiopia, and all the fund comes to you. I think that's a good point to make. The PEER program, I have sent the links, PEER. If you go to nsf.gov and search it, you should be able to find it. If you have specific questions on other issues, we can address it later. The other is, of course, is Department of Education. For education research, of course, the US Department of Education may not fund education in other countries, but the USAID supports education in Ethiopia. Now, what you need to do is align what you would like to do to what they fund. And it may be it's possible they change their focus every 5 years. You see, their target changes. There is nothing static. What they fund today may not be funded next year. So my suggestion is check with USAID and Addis at the embassy. I went myself personally. When I traveled to Ethiopia, I went to the USAID office. I met the director, talked to him what their project was. At that time, they were interested in education of girls in Ethiopia. And I wasn't interested at that point, because what I wanted actually was to bring grant writing to all the universities. That's the discussion I had with him, and they were not funding it. And that's what I left it at that. So my point is, go to embassies, they support education. So talk to them, not only the US embassy, but other embassies as well. If you have any questions, I can answer. But there is educational funding within the US is through the Department of Education. Now, there are a number of things you can do in education. It's just open. So I encourage people to look at these critical projects of especially introducing this research into education, critical thinking, the civic education, and so on. So you can have a number of options in that. So we can deal with that later if you have any questions. Now I'm going to go to the next topic, unless there are specific issues. I will leave for the panel if they want to add on this, on other non-NIH projects, before I go to the next topic, the sponsored programs area.
All right, I think you can just proceed to that if you have any questions. We're collecting questions submitted through the Q&A and we will entertain those during the discussion.
Okay, great. So let's go. Now, until I left Ethiopia, when I worked at Bahar Dar, there was an office called Research and Publications Office, and I used to be the director of that. Now, I wanted to know how many of our universities currently in Ethiopia, in the chat section, if you could just type the university name. If you have a Research and Publications Office, just type the university that if you have a Research and Publications Office. And what I would like to know also is if that office provides support in finding funding, in training you. So I see Alamaya, Gondar, Bahar Dar, so Jimma, Hawassa or Hawassa, Arba Minch, BDU, yes, Debre Marcos. So I think most Salale, Wollo, Wolkite. And so what I see is most of these universities are Jijjiga have, Gondar, Wollo, Wollaga. So these universities have Research and Publications Office. Now, my question is, do they actually give you training on, or do they, what help do they provide? Do they provide help in writing grants, or do they find funding agencies? Do they actually support anything? Okay, one says yes. What university is providing actually support? So limited, okay. So I think what I see is many of them say nothing or very limited support. Probably, I think it just passed. So I see, let me see this briefly. So I think very limited. Generally, what I see is very limited. Also, I have seen provide some support in some of them. So there is some support in that regard. So, which is good, which is great, because what I am going to talk about is basically that office, transforming it or bringing in more. So why do we need what is called generally here in the US sponsored Office of Sponsored Programs? That's when I knew the Research and Publications Office, basically it was doing something similar. In Addis Ababa, of course, it did part of what the Office of Sponsored Programs did. When I was there, Bahar Dar was part of Addis Ababa University, and I got funded through the Addis Ababa University funding, which was the Research and Publications Office. So it actually used to give funding to researchers. I don't know if it does now. Now, why and what is the purpose of such an office? I will briefly go over it. The Office of Sponsored Programs is, so I will stop reading these chats now. So just to let you know that I will not be looking at it. The Office of Sponsored Programs is part of the university. So wherever you are, it will be working for the institution. But it is the link and the partner to the project director, which is, or to the researchers, you, to funding agencies, because they are the ones who provide the money. And the Office of Sponsored Programs actually negotiates, discusses, and talks to them to come and even talk to the faculty, the teachers, the faculty, the researchers. So they are partners also. And of course, federal, state, private agency rules. These companies, that means the funding agencies and the university itself, have policies, rules. When they give the funding or the money, they are going to put stringent rules how you can use it and what is allowable and what is not allowable. For example, in the US, the simplest thing that is not allowable is alcohol. You cannot buy alcohol with the funding. With the National Science Foundation, one strict rule that you cannot break is the money you receive to give to students for student training in no way can be used for any other purpose. If you do that, not only you, but the institution will be punished. Sometimes the punishment is so severe that they will not only ask you to return the entire fund, but they will suspend you from submitting grants again for a number of years. So you have to be careful on how you use the fund. Now, how do you do that? The Office of Sponsor Programs is the one that knows these rules, understands them, and tells you what to do, what not to do. So this is a critical office in the funding cycle. Now, not having it is a critical problem. It's a big gap in Ethiopia. In most institutions, the Office of Sponsor Programs, which now some of the activities or tasks are taken by the Research and Publications Office, actually is not doing that much, because as I remember when I was there, what we did was we organized meetings, annual meetings, we published those, we trained faculty, but not with submission of grants. We were never ever succeeded in I was there for 2 years only, of course. So the point is, it is a key component of the institution. Its primary responsibility is working for the bosses of the university, but it is critical for the improvement, for getting funds, for you to win the grants. So you need that office. Now, so what does it do? So it starts with finding money. The first, what we call, is pre-award. And the pre-award process, what it does is it actually aligns your interest, your capacity, what you are able to do as a researcher, to the funding agencies, what funding agencies actually would be best for you. So what they should do is they learn about each of the instructors, the university professors, what research they do, and then they find funding agencies, and they can tell you, you can apply to this institution or funding at this point. That should be their advice. So they align the principal investigator, that is the researcher or project director, to funding agencies. That's the number one responsibility they have, pre-award, because if not, they're not going to convince you. And of course, they have to push you. If you say, I have 4 courses to teach, I'm too busy, they have to push and say, yes, can we have a meeting? Can we discuss? Can we reduce the load somehow? If you are able or not able to submit this time, can you submit next time? It's a negotiation. And the purpose, their job is to make sure the university gets money more every year. So they have to convince faculty or the instructors or the professors to submit. And they have to find the sources. So they will have to talk to you to generate ideas, bringing people to train you. Like what we are doing this is supposed to be done by sponsor program office. They should bring somebody to train you. So that's one of the key components. And that's why we don't have it really in Ethiopia. The other one is, if you need a collaborator, who normally should search for a collaborator for you? Sponsor programs. They have connections. They will have a database to search, and they can say, can you work with this university? Or other universities who want to collaborate, contact them, and they will approach you. So it is key that it helps in searching for money. As you can see from the cartoon, this guy is searching for money, and that's what they do. Now, the other part, after they convince you to write, and they found, let's say you are submitting to the National Science Foundation, you are interested in studying something. Now what they need to do is, you may need some data. If you need, I need how many students are failing. For example, if you are interested in education and say many students are failing in math and they are leaving the university because math is a difficult course and you really want to solve that problem, where do you get that data? Sponsor programs. That's what they should provide you, data about the university, about things to change, about anything you ask, you should ask them for data. If you need additional data, that's where it is. They are going to tell you institutional policies. If you want to do this and that, and you don't know what the policy is, for example, there are funding agencies that will ask what is called matching funds. Matching funds means they will give you $20,000 or $25,000, but the institution has to give another $25,000 matching the fund. Otherwise, they don't. So matching fund policy is complicated, and they are the ones who should know about it and either find the money or negotiate so that it can be changed into a kind funding. That means your salary could be counted in, or they will say, don't apply to this one. You are just wasting your time. They also find out the agency policy. What is allowed in the agency? Can you submit? Can you have a co-PI? Can you have a collaborator? There are fundings that do not allow collaborators. So they will clear everything to you, because you may miss these things. They are supposed to be the experts on this. And of course, you may inflate your budget, put things that are not allowed, and they should know the budget detail. They will say, no, you cannot have this, and you cannot include this. And if you, for example, if it allows salary, let's say the agency allows salary, which is, let's say, 10% of the total, but you increase it to 20, they will say, no. If you put that, it will be rejected. Make sure it's only 10%. So they know that. And of course, there are different tables and forms you need to complete to submit. And they should know that. That's a required document. Otherwise, it becomes incomplete and they will reject it. And you will need support letter. You will need support certain letters from the dean, from the, the vice president's office, or the president's office in Ethiopia case, here in the chancellors. If you need that, they will draft the letter. Once what they will ask you is send us the summary. When they have the project summary, they will draft it and send it. And with the approval, the person signs it, approves it, and send it back. It's faster and easier, and you'll get the most appropriate support letter. And of course, if you are busy, you have, let's say, a new child, or you just get married, or you're just too busy doing stuff, they will call and say, what's going on with your work? Are you submitting? When? Can we help you? This is critical, and it is important to help you. So make sure you establish this office in that regard. Then comes the victory. Let's say you successfully get the money and you are happy about it. How do you use it? How do you use to be successful in doing exactly what you propose to do? Again, they are responsible for monitoring it. This is to keep you accountable and the institution. It's not only you. If you abuse money and the money is not used appropriately, it can cost everyone, not only you, the institution as well. So you need to manage your award appropriately, and they are the ones who will set your account, give you access to the money in every category you applied for. Remember, Dr. Joseph was explaining how you describe, narrate your budget, the justification. The budget justification will be changed into a table. If you said, I will spend this money for students, then it will be a student line and the budget will be there. And every time you pay a student, that will be taken off. And clear compliance about all institution policies, funding agency policies, federal policies, state policies. In the United States, there are so many policies you have to follow. They should know and implement. And of course, the Institutional Review Board, IRB. If you want to do research with human subjects, there is a very strict policy that you need to follow. That is that compliance is implemented through the Institutional Review Board. There is a board that looks at the proposed activity and approve or ask you to do things. You know, what kind of information are you providing to the people participating in your research? Is it going to affect their health or their reputation? So there are details that they are supposed to clear. Hiring policy. If you want to hire someone, you just can't hire. You have to be open in your hiring. You have to pick the right person. And then, of course, IRB, the sponsored programs will be involved there. And of course, they also monitor whether you submit your reports, because reporting is key. If you don't submit your report, your fund can be not canceled, but they will not release next year funding. And of course, you cannot apply another proposal to them. And as they go forward, of course, if there are changes in policy, they are supposed to know it. They are supposed to know it. If things change, they will say, this year, you cannot do this. I know we did this last year. The policy has changed, because you can't follow everything. You have to teach classes, advise students, and at the same time do research. So you need someone to do this for you. Now, if you are not careful, things can go wrong. So make sure you use your fund appropriately. It can cost, as I said, not only you, but the institution as well. And they are responsible for monitoring fund use. If you are not careful, things can go wrong. Now, once everything goes fine, you submit your final report and life goes as great as possible, because you are going to use this project as your springboard. You are going to say, we got this much money from this funding agency, and we have successfully completed the tasks, achieved the goals, and published such and such paper, trained such individuals. For example, if you get funded through the National Science Foundation, let's say for 2 years, and successfully completed, and you submit another grant on the 3rd year, there is a portion that will require you to submit a description of your prior funding. So results from prior funding, reports of those information, that will be key. You will have to clearly, like maybe in half a page or 1 page, explain what the objectives were and how you achieved them, results, publications, students, PhD, master's, undergraduate students who were mentored through research and graduated. That data or institutional infrastructure you develop, this has to be clearly stated. If you don't give the results there, what they say is, he was funded last time, or she was funded last time. What did they do with it? Nah, squandered the money. I don't think it's wise to fund this individual. So you basically lose that chance. So make sure you publish through your funded research. Don't underestimate the value or the power of funding and announcing, because there is also, actually, I did not include that, a key component in NSF is data dissemination. Data management and dissemination, I'm sure Dr. Tesfaye mentioned this, dissemination is key. If you haven't presented in meetings, if you haven't published it, if you haven't released some kind of result, I don't know, if you are developing an app or some kind of infrastructure, if you don't have that and make it...
እንትን ማለት ነው ስሙ አንድ ፈንድድ የሆነ ፕሮጀክት ብታሳዩ ደስ ይላል። ማአት ሰው እየጠየቀ ነው. Do you have an example of already funded project, or we may have to attach it to the material we're going to send? I think that's what you should say when you turn calm.
We will find.
Oh, there's so many questions, and I'm on the top.
Yeah. We will address it later.
You can see that. And now, think about it. You're going to talk in a minute, right? Or there's a panel discussion. At that point, we will need to bring that topic.
We will talk about it later.
Okay.
During the discussion.
All right. Bye.
All right. So you will need data dissemination as part of it. How do you disseminate your findings? NSF, even NIH, I don't think will allow you to hoard data and keep it to yourself. Actually, as far as I know, NIH's published material is all open access. It's freely accessible to anyone. So if you are funded through NSF, you may not be fully required to put it open access, but they will give you money for publishing. So I don't see the reason why you don't publish it open access. Open access means making it downloadable for everyone without payment, because funding agencies, the publishers want to charge per paper if you want to download it. And for most people living in countries that are not really rich, they don't have access to that. So they want this to be accessible. So you have to have a very clear statement of data accessibility. So that's very important, and make sure you publish that. So in simple terms, the Office of Sponsored Programs will help you all through the process. I hope I'm not taking too much time. I think that's basically, this is just a summary of the what you do with the idea development, with the finding collaborators, until you submit your report. They will be very happy to support you. And remember, they will find the money. They will tell you what to do, what not to do, and help you do the actual research. It's an example of an environmental researcher going and interviewing people. I guess this is in Ethiopia. And they will help you make sure follow policies of the institution and benefit from what the institution offers as well. So it's a key office that, by the way, many funding agencies will require such an office to sign on a proposal. You cannot individually submit to NSF. So it is important. If you want to submit directly to NSF, you cannot as an individual. Only the Office of Sponsored Programs can submit that. So there must be a designated person that NSF knows, and that's the only contact person that submits. So make sure that you have those offices ready. Push your administrators, if there are administrators. Also, I encourage you to do that. And I would like actually to know, what is the major problem for not creating such an office? Is it the Department of Education creating an issue? Because if it is, we can actually write an open letter to Department of Education, I forgot his name, and Dr. Afwork as well, to make sure that this office is created in all universities so that it enhances. I think, and the other importance is that for the institution itself, it summarizes data, all data in terms of who got money, who submitted, what kind of funding was available, what did faculty do. That data is summarized and provided by this office. So this is a critical office, and I encourage all to benefit from it. So you will like it if you have it. And I would like to thank the AfRIE presenters, and especially Dr. Tesfaye for sharing the slides with me. And of course, some of the cartoons were taken online. They are not mine, and I acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yoalam. We have our next speaker, Dr. Tesfaye Wubet. Is Tesfaye there?
Yeah, I am there.
Tesfaye is going to be talking about networking. So if Yoalam, if you can unshare your slides.
I'm trying to do. It's not allowing me to unshare. It's still giving me to share.
Okay, do you want to continue? I'm going to
pause share. Oh, okay.
Are you okay? Are you okay now?
Is it unshared or not?
It's still there.
It's still there.
Not giving me the option to unshare. So let me go out.
Okay. I wonder if your screen just froze, maybe.
It seems so. Yeah. So, what?
Yeah, there is a whole bunch of windows that he opened. All right. Well, it looks much better now. All right. Tesfaye, I think it's yours.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's free. Yeah. Okay, so I will make it. Good. Could you see the slide now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So my name is Tesfaye Wubet. So I'm living in Germany, working at the Helmholtz Center of Environmental Research. I'm a senior scientist, independent researcher in environmental genomics. I'm also associated or affiliated with the German research. So we have Center for Integrated Biodiversity Research, which is established and sitting also in Leipzig, next to Halle, where I'm living in. So the topic of my presentation would be networking. So that would be, and then I will focus mainly on collaborative research, which might be interesting for those senior staff members. But it's good to know also for the youngest generation. So I will go through the planning and implementation, and I will try to share you my experience where I was transformed from a microbiologist to a person who is working interdisciplinarily with different people, with different colleagues, working in different teams at different scales, as you can see here. So I've been working in different multidisciplinary, ecosystem and functioning projects, graduate schools, and some global change experimental facilities, where I will have only one share of the project but working together with different groups and different teams, which is a life-changing experience, by the way. So I can't move. Slide.
So try your arrow on the keyboard.
So the slide is not moving. I don't know why.
Okay, can you exit the slideshow? Right click. Oh,
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay. Now it comes. Okay. Now it comes. Sorry for the interruption. So networking. So anyway, so as a social, as a human being, we are networking at all levels. So we are in communication with individuals, with colleagues, friends, family members, community members. And we are also communicating as employees between organizations, and whatever the level of communication that we are going through. So this is an interaction with specific individuals. And so for our day-to-day life, also in the private sphere, so maintaining good relationship is a vital skill. And that's also very important in the academia, which is what I learned. Then when we go to the research specifically, so we have a different scale of communication. So whether we are doing an individual project or a big interdisciplinary project, we are always in communication. So that's what we are doing also currently. And what we see here is that, so even in the individual projects, so we have a communication and information exchange when we are working. So we are working in a smaller team, at least with a supervisor as a student. So a group of two, it's not only the student himself or the scientists, him or herself, that who are working or dealing with the project. But this scales up as we include additional communications or complementary people in the discussion. So that will develop into coordinated network, cooperative network, and then the highest scale will be the one where we work with joint goals, joint identities, and working together. So on the same platform with the same or joint goal, just visioning to understand the system in together, all together, from the different perspective of specialization. So we have the individual way of approach where we just tackle only a single problem with a single team or a single group, or a group of two. And we have the extreme, which is a joint, based on a joint goal, a joint identity, working together to understand the system. And that's what I am trying to explain. And this is mainly based on this transformation started early in the 2000 with the concept of One Health with the group of scientists, which Tesfaye yesterday showed also. So this concept of the One Health issue, as you can see here. So the whole idea started in the early 2000 in understanding the interaction between the human and animals with their ecosystem, which anyway shapes the health of both animals and the human and also the environmental health. So whether we are working in the human health, on the animal health, or in the environment, somehow we have a possibility to interact together, to have a joint perspective or a joint project to solve some issues. And that's how after this concept, then it leads to the coming or the happening of this collaborative or integrative projects, because the whole concept was to ensure the well-being of mankind through collaborative or integrative problem solving. So which could be at a local, so we can do it at a specific locality or ecosystem level. It could also be at a national level. It could also be at a global level. So because of that, then there are, since 2000, so the number of multidisciplinary projects came into existence. solving these integrated projects with integrated questions or projects. And so Jonathan Adams, he did some preliminary analysis, the impact of this joint project in 2012, and he published it in Nature. As you can see it here in the diagram, so the analysis based on these joint publications which are come out from these joint efforts or networks shows that the huge amount of connectivity or joint publications happens in the Northern America and in Europe. And then in the Asia, that was also the beginning of these connected works. And the outcome of the result was that through funding of the development or funding of these research networks, there is a rise of shared resources, resource sharing, funding, sharing facilities, sharing ideas, understanding the system better than the individual projects, which leads to share of major facilities, rapid spread of knowledge, and then the rise of highly cited and many co-authored research papers, which also facilitates that these papers to be cited more and then read more by the scientific community. And in his comparison, he also showed that even between the scientists in the US and the UK, so in his comparison, the individual papers which were published domestically in both countries were less cited and less read than the joint papers, which was also one of the impact of these research networks. So as brilliantly presented by my friends, so earlier today and yesterday, so the whole idea of the grant writing is winning a grant, and that is gaining resources, which includes funding, facilities, and ideas. And the success rate of gaining this collaborative research grant, so as we discussed yesterday evening, also depends. It's just a trade-off between the novelty of the research question and the requirement of the funding agencies. As Jonathan showed it, so in the previous slide, as you can see here, there was a lot of investment. There is still a lot of investment in Europe and in North America on research facilities for these integrated projects on the sequencing, mainly in genomics and analysis platforms, high throughput analysis framework. So they are establishing a lot. And there are also big integrated research facilities or experimental sites, which are being developed in in the North America, in Asia. In the meantime, there are also many, especially in China. And so the funding is coming mainly from the European Union, so through the ERS grant, and there are also other grants also from the German Science Foundation. And in the US, there are also these big grants which are coming also regarding also the sequencing, where I'm working as a microbial ecologist from the Joint Genome Institute through DOE. And all this funding, it's a competitive. And then when they are writing, so the grants, they have their own requirements. And then we have to find a collaborative team which finds the novelty on the one hand and satisfies also the requirements, which was mentioned earlier. And then the next challenge in a collaborative or integrative research team or project is that you need to have research group and a collaboration team success. So the team that you are setting together determines the success. And these are also the trade-off between the two. The team composition is the key for the success. If you have a problematic group, then the success will be undermined, or the other way around. And this success story or the integration of the group, it starts with the designing, writing, evaluation, implementation. So through all these steps, from the conception of the project, it's through the implementation of the project. So it's a key process. So therefore, in the networking and collaboration success is a key factor in developing and implementation of such a collaborative research projects. And it should be based on mutual respect, communication, and shared goals. And according to V. Skillan and Silva, so which summarizes the network principles and collaboration successes into 4. So I will just give you some highlights before I give you some examples of from my experience. The first criteria that to have a clear purpose and expectation. So you need to have a vision which is bigger, so a larger scale, which is not for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. It should be a long-term vision and visioning and addressing a shared goal of the research team. So that's the beginning of the collaborative research. And then once you have the vision, then it will follow up with a partnership-based trust. So where you recruit or gather people working together. So this is a partner selection becoming the most important and successful in the success of the networks. And this partner selection is, so it was also mentioned yesterday, you need to have a trustful and complementary partners. What do you mean by trustful and complementary partners? So trustful means then you have to trust their competence based on their specialization or the specific area of research. Then they should be trustful in their funding records, then their publication records. Complementarity also refers to the same. So there shouldn't be any redundant effort, but they should complement each other so that they can give a bigger picture of the problem or the ecosystem that we are interested to look for. And so there are also institutions involved. It's not only the people behind the people. So there are also the institutions. It's also good to know the university record, how good they are, the institution itself, and then within the institution, just to see also the group which you are targeting for, and available facilities, because we need different facilities in the integrated project to do the different platforms. And as mentioned earlier by Joseph, so the analysis platform for both the bioinformatics and the biostatistics or statistical analysis now, so everything is being done in high throughput or HPC clusters. So these are also key points one has to consider in selecting and building the team. Further criteria which are important to consider and then to keep in mind are, so promote the others. So just you have to go from yourself, so own ego, and then we have to acknowledge our limitations, that we are specialized in one topic, but we can't have a look of the whole ecosystem. Then we have to be able to open to learn, engaging others so that we can have a better look of the system. So promoting others is a key. So especially when you come the leader and then part of a team, to have a good team and to be a team player. And building the constellation, not the star. So it's not, so when you are building a collaboration, so it's not to be the star of the group. So it is to have many stars which are constellating and then seen together so that they will be visible more than the individual star. So that's the whole idea. And then this is the whole idea of the teamwork and working as a team so that we will be able to mobilize the various organizations, resources, and knowledge together so that we will come up at the end with the better impact. So these are the 4 key points. And then this is individually, so personally, it's just a paradigm shift. So it's just from individual, which is self-centered, resource garnering, and so specific topic focused research into a trust-based, mission-based, so the broader or long-term project, and with sharing resources and having a broader vision and broader understanding of the ecosystem. So these are the principles which one has to keep in mind when joining the collaborative research network. So the criteria are important. So it might be, we will be invited. So in such a collaborative project, then we have to see that whether we are fitting in the group and we are delivering what they are expecting to us. So that's one of the criteria which we have to be to keep in mind. And if we are in a position to write, or if you are to write the project or initiate the project, and then we have to take the advantage of these principles to set up a very effective and productive team together. So this is the Biodiversity Exploratories project, one of very successful projects, national projects in Germany. So after my PhD, I started with a postdoc, and in 1 year, so I was transformed, started establishing my group with my tenure track position, and ended up as API in the project. And I've been working for the last 10, 12 years. And this project as API has different phases, a very successful, highly integrative project. As you can see, we are working in 3 sites in Germany, grassland and forest ecosystems, and to understand the effect of land use change on the biodiversity and biodiversity loss. So this, as you can see from the screen, so it's below ground. So we are dealing all possible measurements. There is above ground, including animals, plants, and there are many organizational projects which are involved in the project. And in one funding period, which lasts for 3 years, and it's every time, so it's about 15 years now. So you have about 40 projects running. So, and then with more than 100, 150 people involved in the project as leaders and as co-workers also. And I will share you some of the experiences, the lesson that I got, which I thought would be beneficiary for you. So in developing and managing a collaborative project, so there are 2 phases. So the first phase is so developing the project until the evaluation and the defense. So the first part is the project conceptualization phase, where you will come, so a group of people or individuals will come with the novel idea, which we were discussing in the last days. And then to address this novel idea, then they will select a platform and they will set up the design. So this is the long process where these people, so the main brains, they sit together and then develop and work and then clarify also about the platform, the research sites. So there are many steps, then there are a lot of meetings in the process, project conceptualization phase. So they are also communicating the funding agency, so to get the appropriate fund for that. And once they get the go ahead to write that project, then you start building the team. And in building the team, so what I learned in the meantime, also in the other projects, it's always key to have a central project. So the central project would be coordination, so coordinating the whole project process, so writing project, and then the data and site management. So the data management are the people who are responsible for the data, which ULM was referring to. You have to submit your data. There will be a big database. So in Germany now currently we have a big database initiative. So we have to confirm that we are submitting to a given database to get funding. So that's also important. And the project, such a project, they need to have also their own data management team in the project. So these are the central projects mainly led by the people who are conceptualizing the project. And then within the project, then you have also sub-projects, so which are covering different topics. For instance, soil microbiology and soil nutrient, so regarding the below ground, and then you have the above ground, so animal ecology, and then the plant ecology, just to make it shorter. So then the list of the sub-projects, so grows depending on the amount of money that's available from the granting agency. But here, so this first you just make such a sketch, and after the sketching, and then you just go for hunting for the right people. So who would be leading this project? So 1 who would be leading project 2, project 3, project 4. Then in that case, then it comes all the criteria of the people. So their publication, their funding records, or are they complementary? Are they trustful? How with their publication record? You just look for their publication impacts through Google Scholar, so the H-index. So these are the stories which one has to check here to establish the group. And once you have the group, and then decide, so I have enough team or enough members the sub-projects, enough sub-projects to address this key question, then will come the writing phase. And the writing phase, then there is a project which will be written for the central project. Within the central project of the whole, including the design, the platform description, etc. And then the individual projects, they will use the same platform, the same design, and then include their own specific project. So methods and designs or sampling schemes. And then that will be shaped also together. And then there will be also a number of meetings. So for the team building, and then after the team building, there will be a number of meetings for the writing and then come the submission. After the submission come the evaluation. So normally in Germany, so my experience in the different projects is that, so you just get sent the international evaluation teams, the projects will be evaluated and there is a defense. So before the Corona period, so we used to make it in a live. So every sub-project, so the central project team, they make the presentation for the central project. Then every individual PI for the individual project will make or justify why he is planning to do with the budget, all the issues. There are also questions, answers personally, and then there is a closed session. Yeah, then afterwards, there will be the decision. So all the steps which were discussed from the NIH and NSF partly also work for that. And once you are through, and then assuming that you get through after the defense, so the green lights just to go ahead, and then the funding, and then the structure will change a bit. And this is the starting phase of the management. And then instead of the conception group, so there will be the leaders, the leadership. So there will be a speaker team or executive team, if you like. So selected from the set projects. And then we have the teams, so which are already established earlier, so with the PIs. And then there will be the staff employment. And once we have the staff employment, then the team gets larger. So you will have additional staff, PhD students, postdocs, which are involved in the project. And then this will create a large group. And so it's depending on the where and the core of the project, some of the sub-projects might be canceled. There will be budget shortage of or cuts of the budget. Then we will make a kickoff meeting normally. And during the kickoff meeting, all these situations will be revised and so reassessed, and depending on the funding and the availability and then the staff availability, then the project starts. So the real management of the project starts. So all the projects, so the central projects will be managed within the speaker, the main speaker university or research institute. And the sub-projects will be managed within the research offices of the individual PI, so the main PIs normally. So in the project where I'm involved, so it's managed within the UFZ or the Environmental Research Center. We have well-organized research office. I can comment on what Yuala mentioned. So it's a very important office. So at UFZ, so but this I will do it later. So this will be managed by the universities and the research officers. And what's important that during the kickoff meeting, so regarding the management, then there will be thematic group meeting and exchange. So about the outcome of the evaluation and the planning of the project, how to implement, and then develop, coordinate, and sampling workflows, field work plan, etc. So this will be done during the kickoff meeting. So that will be normally a couple of days in a hotel with some retreats. And then afterwards, then every project will work on the data generation. So those who work on the field, they will go for the field. Those who after sampling, then will go to the lab and then start generating the data. Once the data are available, then data sharing is very, very important. So as mentioned earlier. And this data sharing is responsibility of each specific project. So for the PhD students, a postdoc, and the PIs who will have the data ownership, right? And then they submit the data to the data management team, to the database, which will be available for all other groups. And there will be regular progress and seminars, and joint publications are discussed on those seminars. Normally, such meetings are organized by the coordination team, and annual meetings are advised. And this is what we do in the biodiversity exploratories and some other projects too. But there are also some seminars and joint meetings, so from parallel projects for the sake of joint publication, so which is also sometimes financed by the grant. And the last one is so the census manuscript. So this is targeting high impact journals. Normally in many of such big and highly funded projects, so there is a census project. And the vision of the census project, which comes mainly after the second round of the project, where you put all the data together and then they make use of the data from the data management team, where all the PIs and the data generating PhD students or postdocs, they will be involved, but they have the right to be co-author on that census and also involved in the analysis of the data. And the idea is just to go to have these high impact papers, which Jonathan Adams was writing in his Nature paper, which is also the goal of the collaborative research teams, to have a high impact census paper, just putting the data together and then giving a bigger picture than the individual projects. And the individual papers with the joint publication, they are produced by the PhD students for their PhD or by the postdocs.
Okay, Tesfa, I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes.
I'm done. Yeah. Sorry. So that's how it's the progress and the management. So thank you for your attention and attendance, and yeah, questions or help. So these are you are welcomed, and I'm done. So in time.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So I think this is the time for question and answers. Dr. Daniel Inkobahari and Tesfaye Mersha will be entertaining this, but I will also help in kind of reading some of the questions as well. So Daniel, I know you are at a different place. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tesfaye, are you there? Tesfaye Mersha?
You are mute, Tesfaye.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so do you have? I've tried to summarize some of the questions. Most of them are similar. I don't know. Do you want me to read it for you and kind of guide the panelists to comment?
That would be great, Dr. Talon, if that's okay.
Okay, great. And the reason we're doing this is because Daniel is, I think, he's somewhere in a different place, so it might be easy for him to do that. So we have probably about 30 minutes.
Dr. Talon, one thing, there is huge request about the presentation and the video. Would you mind to clarify to everybody?
Yeah. That will be something we will do. Again, I was going to mention that during the closing remark, so I'm going to just say it early, and I'll probably repeat it again. So we will have the slides for you on a Google folder, and I will send email with a link. And plus the videos will also be available to everyone who participated, of course, in this workshop. And we'll send a link for those as well. And the video, by the way, is still on YouTube. We probably will leave it there for a few days unless something catastrophic happens. We don't want to make it, we don't want people post something not nice, okay? It has to be all science. But we will see how that goes. So at least for a few days, you also have the chance to see the videos on YouTube. With that, so one of the questions that was asked was I don't know if you guys read it yesterday because I wasn't there to the end. There was a question by Malako who asked to get a list of known grantors for small research grants, non-held field. I don't know. I think anyone.
I can comment on that one. So there are different resources from where grants projects can be funded. I went through a list of them yesterday. So when you get access to the slides, a number of them were not health specific related, including agriculture, economics, actually policy, and others. So I encourage you to look into those slides and look at the links that I've posted on the slides as well, for your specific interests. And so there's a lot of information in the slide set that I presented yesterday. So that would be my suggestion. There are different agencies that fund a lot more than health. So I would encourage you to look at that. I don't know if there is anything else Dr. Tesfaye wants to add to this.
No, that's right. I think you already presented. Maybe they haven't seen the slides, so they will get it there. Yeah, as you said, health is one part of the equation. There's all from nuclear or different things supported by different organizations. So once you guys get the slide, if you have additional questions, specific questions, you can reach out any of us so we can try our best.
Okay. So I think we can move on to the next question. There was another one from Ayano Alemi. He said, can you provide us with information about grants for PhD dissertation projects?
Yes, so in the presentation yesterday, one of the links I included in the slides had specifically opportunities for funding short and long-term training, academic training with universities. So I would just refer you to look at that, and that has some links that are specific actually to Ethiopia as well. And besides that, there are opportunities at each university. So I would encourage you to check universities or institutes that you plan to attend, and sometimes they have scholarships, international scholarships. Other agencies as well can also provide potential resources for education. In the past, I'm not sure currently, but the British Council used to have funds for for training abroad, and others as well. And so I would encourage you to look into those. Dr. Tesfaye,
Dr. Yalom, maybe you can add on that on student training teams related, maybe.
I mean, I think student training has to be integrated into the whole research. So all kinds of research normally require have a portion that would deal with student training, PhD, up to even involving high school students. So it all depends on the area. So unless it's very specific and then know what exactly the person is focusing on, it's very difficult to advise a funding agency just by looking at that. So my suggestion is whoever asks this, they can just email me and we can chat a little bit, and then I can direct them to one of you to add more.
Yeah, I think that's great.
One just a brief thing, which may be only for the US. We have here a pre-doctoral and doctoral training scholarship. So if you are pursuing a PhD or MD PhD, there is scholarship that you can apply from NIH if it's health related. So there are multiple levels. And if you are a junior faculty, just starting as an assistant professor, there is also a training grant. We discussed most of the grants like kind of investigator initiative, but there are training grants for junior people like you, which we call it care type of grant with mentorship and all in place. So there are different level of grants, but some of them are actually extended to Africa. The one grant last time it came out for African junior faculty in health related. So there are multiple ways to look at. So
thank you. So again, we'll move on to the next question. There is another questionnaire at Ababu. He's asking, can one use a research question and hypothesis interchangeably?
Yeah, Joseph, maybe take this.
Joseph, did you hear the question? You're mute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please, can you repeat the question?
So he's asking, Ababu is asking whether one can use a research question and hypothesis interchangeably.
Not really. I mean, the research question to me is the overarching objective. What's the problem? Are you trying to address some health problem, agricultural, engineering? So the question is more the substantive, the scientific area or the subject matter area. Hypothesis, you could have one or two or more. Those are just within, embedded as part of addressing that overarching question. So I would not use them exchangeably, but they are also, it doesn't mean they are not related. In fact, they are related. The hypothesis is just a subset of that question. So you could have one or two or more hypotheses to do some of that or to address the question you're asking. That's how I interpret it.
I think we posted the answer in more detail on the questions and answers. In more detail with example, what the research question should be, with examples, say, how to reduce the traffic in Addis. That would be a good question. The hypothesis would be by changing the working time, by allowing, to say, different companies, say some people start at 6, the other people at 10 o'clock in the morning, that's hypothesis that will reduce. Then you have to go and collect the data to disprove your hypothesis. So, or proof for that matter.
Thank you, Jonas. I'm glad you said that. You reminded me something that I've been posting on the chat box the last few minutes ago. Many people requested, can we have a sample, a successful proposal? For the NIH, I provided a link that has several, not just one, many funded, a full package. As Tesfaye just said, there are, a training type of grants, fellowship, and big research grants. I gave that. In addition, I'm going to post it again here. In addition, I gave one example out of many. Just they can, if they click this will be a PDF file, which is big, 117 pages. And I try to point them to some of the components we discussed this morning. So
maybe we can get a short list and kind of send it by email as well.
Or we can post it in our website. So in the training section of our website, then people can go and visit the website to download or to go directly. One of the things I put on the questions and answers is we probably will put a number of funding agencies, both from European, North American, and African Academy of Sciences sites, so that the students or the trainees today can go and search what fits to them, to their interest, which agency fits with them, like the USDA or the European Union frameworks and so forth.
So the question in terms of hypothesis versus research question, if you see this one example, which I just posted, you will see what I was referring to. So there will be one overarching research question, but to answer that, there will be multiple hypotheses. That's clearly demonstrated in this. So that's why I don't think we can just say they are interchangeable. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Just can I add one point?
Yeah,
for
National
Science Foundation, it depends on the program. Now, let's say you are trying to go through the biology. In biology, there are so many areas, but the moment you reach the focus or the call, that specific solicitation, always at the bottom, there is a link, what says recently funded. It will give you all the grants funded in the last like 10 or 20 years. All those abstracts are there. So you can download and read what has been funded, what is being done at the moment, because if you duplicate, if you think you have a good idea and one of those individuals are working on it, you're wasting your time. So you need to clear that also. So there is endless resource. What you need is time and access to the internet. Otherwise, once you have this idea, just sit down, go through and screen, because this is not something someone can do for you. This is something you really need to sit down and go through one by one. If you need help, we can support, but it's very field specific. That's my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Another questionnaire, I think, Dr. Joseph, you have emphasized this earlier about abstract, but I think maybe you can go over this again. There is a questionnaire. Yehuni is asking, what is the necessity of an abstract in the grant proposal?
Okay, so again, thank you. This will be clear when they receive a copy of the slides that I shared earlier. The reason is that the abstract plus the narrative, those are the two that will be posted in public. So for many reasons. One, anybody like us, if we go to that database that Professor Tesfaye showed us, a reporter, that is the part you will see. You will not see the entire package or the entire proposal, but you will still get an idea of why those guys were funded. And the taxpayers can read too, and they will see like their money was invested in such and such and such to address such and such questions. So it's important, and it has to stand alone. It captures the key components, and it also should be understandable not only to the scientific community, but also to ordinary readers. So it has many advantages beyond that technical part and the complicated part. Thank you.
Thank you.
Talaun, there is a question I would like to address by Mogus Belleto on instrumentation, on instruments that are needed for doing especially molecular research. And, he states that it is quite a challenge. It's not just, he says, all you shared is, important, but our problem is not only hunting grants, but also having facilities. So
there is another one. Maybe you guys can tie it together. There is another questionnaire Tababu was asking about the procedural issues in the Ministry of Finance for getting grant funding. So it is mentioning they are just becoming a hindrance to research.
I did respond to that one because I visited a couple of years ago the technology universities, the one in Akaki, and there were individuals who got funded from Ethiopia. There is a funding for 5 million per fund for research, so from within Ethiopia. So those guys, they showed me their microbiology labs, and the challenge was they were not able to use the money to buy or purchase equipment because the process, and there is a shortage of dollars, is the major hindrance. They could not use the money they had in the bank. And this is a major concern. And I understand that part. They were trying to change the rules, but some things are quite a challenge because of the need for US dollars, and the dollar coming within the country is, the government puts the priority. So some things we cannot control, but you can do some things like if you get funding from abroad, you can actually request the equipment to be bought and sent it to you through your collaborators. Now, what you need is permission from your funding agency and from your own institution. If you do that, it is possible to do that. You don't need to go to get the money in Ethiopia, in your Ethiopian birr, and then try to get the equipment out and change it into dollar again. You don't need that. If that is allowed, that's one way. But I understand this limitation. It's not easy. I was talking to the university president. Their hands are tied. So it is an issue with sending money out of the country to buy equipment is a challenge. Now, in terms of generally buying equipment, what I suggest is, for example, if you apply for the peer program through the National Science Foundation, you can actually talk to NSF instead of sending the money to buy the equipment and purchase equipment in the US directly and get it in Ethiopia. I think that's possible, and you should think about it, look into it. I don't know any like the MRI program NSF has, like major research instrumentation. Here you can apply up millions to buy equipment if you are really trying to create an infrastructure. But I don't know if such a programs exist for other countries outside of the US. I don't know what NIH has. Yeah. You may comment on that.
Let me add one more thing on this. I think Tasfaye, we posted a capacity building proposal solicitation, which all they want to do is buy an instrument for African universities. We posted it and submitted, I think mostly for Bahar Dar University and maybe Debre Marcos University. I know a person applied and for it, but again, those type of funding solicitation exists. You just have to search for them, which means this funding will only support buying instrumentation for, say, medical field, biomedical research, actually, that's what they say. So there are funding agencies who support instrumentation and capacity building. You just have to sit down and search for them. And when we have some, we will always distribute across our participants today.
Yeah, and quickly to add on that, this is a importance of collaboration. So collaborative efforts between researchers in developed and developing countries will help for that, and AfRIE can play some of that role, and that's what we are anticipating our efforts could lead to. So just wanted to comment on that.
Okay, there are a couple of people who are asking the problems they are facing as the young scientists, that whenever they send their proposals, they don't get funding because they don't have a strong biosketch. So they are asking how to overcome this challenge.
Great. So I can start commenting on that. So as very nicely outlined by the presenters, including today's Dr. Josephs, the components of the application need to be very strong to be funded. And therefore, all the procedures that were outlined need to be followed. For junior investigators or researchers, very important to have a strong mentor who actively, helps them and looks at their materials and comments them. And it is very important for them, to have their applications reviewed by others who are more senior in the field to make sure that they have really, included all the necessary materials and have, strong application. So that is very, very important, particularly for junior investigators and people who are starting up. And this includes a very careful eye of their bioskets, and make sure that it includes all the important points reviewers will be looking for. So that's something they can do. And I will let Dr. Joseph, if you want to comment on that, or others.
No, Daniel, I think you put it nicely. So yeah, so there is no substitute for it, to be honest. But senior investigators have also a duty and responsibility to mentor these young and upcoming researchers. So see, in our universities, and it's common to involve students and junior people in many of our work. So through that collaborative environment, they build their CV, and if they get one or two first author paper, they'll look even better. So I think, to me, it's a big problem. It's sometimes it's institutional, it's cultural. We need just to really create and promote this culture to be common in our nation. That's just my advice.
Yeah, I just
one little add on that one is please tag along with your senior researchers. You have to write the proposal with already established people. That's what we do when we were young. And make sure your area of research and the senior area of research may be similar. And then you can write hypotheses, you can get mentored, but at the same time, work with them. If we work with them, you will go to publish with respected researcher, then you can start building your own credibility, what we call a technical credibility. To build that one, you need to work with some senior. If you're a junior, work with the senior people, build that credibility that you can do the job, then you can go by your own. It's almost natural in this field.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. From what I have seen, most of the participants, I don't know if most of the actually, I have seen comments that some of the institutions that currently as our universities in Ethiopia may lack a sufficient number of experienced professors. So I don't know how many senior professors, researchers there are in each university to mentor others. That is the first challenge that I see. Now, the other one is what Dr. Youssef indicated, is the cultural, institutional lack of a staggered approach. Professors, experienced ones, mentoring junior ones, and of course the junior professors mentoring new ones, the new ones working with postdocs working with masters and undergraduate students. That kind of culture, as far as when I grew up, there wasn't. There are statements that I remember, oh, he is the only, she is the only. That's just the culture that killed our institutions. And if we want to go to what you want to change, you have to change it. Nobody is going to change it for you. And individually, each of us have the responsibility to create teams, push administration to stagger, push senior professors to work with juniors. It's going to be a challenge because senior professors think they lose when they work with the junior because it takes time to mentor. But they should see it as an investment. They should be given credit by the university officials. And that's the only way. It has to be incentivized. That's my take. And I hope it will change because really it's a major hindrance for growth in the country. There is very little support for young researchers.
Thank you.
Probably
we have a few. Who is going? Maybe I can give you a couple of short, brief. Okay, go ahead. I will make it brief because so the other colleagues already commented, but there are some questions. So regarding, I think for PhD students, so I think there are many PhD students or candidates who are looking for lab facilities, including so mainly for the molecular work. So to come to Germany, so there are different short-term scholarship possibilities. What you need to write me is a short, or what we call it a white paper, a short form of your project and what you are planning to do. And then we evaluate that one and we grant you a support later. So I will facilitate that one with my department head. And then you can apply for the AD or other possible travel grants where you can have a lab facility and the proper mentoring and so writing or the team working here. And the other issue regarding mentoring, so the seniors to the juniors. So this is, there should be a paradigm shift in Ethiopia. So this is what Yuval mentioned, and especially for those who are on the senior, so assistant professors, associate professors at the universities who are attending this seminar. Please consider your way of interaction with the youngest generation. Try to mentor them as colleagues, as future scientists who are taking care of the future. So this is something which we need to start to think among ourselves. So that's what I want to say. All right, thank you. Somebody commented, actually, I was just suddenly quoted that comment. He's saying, it's just like growing a crop under a eucalyptus tree. They want to be the only ones in the country. So that is really that just caught me. Yeah, that's wrong. All right?
Sad but true.
Yeah, so senior scientists, faculty, if you are attending, please be the
hopefully
be the change, you know. Okay, I think maybe one more question.
There's
yes.
one simple question with somebody was asking about physics and math. I think hard science, maybe we can link them with, you know, the person who in the NSF, the physics grant manager.
Professor
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
If you just announce that, we'd be happy to link them to him.
Yeah, there are a couple of people. They are asking how they can contact us. Maybe we will share our email. Everybody has my email, not Gmail that I shared, but I can add the panelists' email as well for you guys. Then one last question before our closing remark. There is a question Gizacho Chani is asking, are the funders, or do the funders exclusively own copyright of the outcome of the funded research? What's your experience?
So I can comment on that. No, in general terms, it depends on the arrangement. So for especially you know, like the NIH and other government funded funding agencies, you know, the science belongs to the people, to the population. So for taxpayers, if you will. So because of that reason, all the results, products of the research project need to be publicly available and for public use. So it's not just the funding agencies, but there are agencies that fund projects that are exclusively addressing the needs of the funder. So in those cases, it is going to be on that agreement between the funder, the agency, and the researcher. And in that agreement, they may ask for the researcher to give rights to the products. And so again, it's very important to look at the solicitation, the request for proposal, as well as the agreement between the funder and the researcher. So we can't generalize, in terms of who has ownership of the product, because it varies very widely. And so that's my thought on that. I don't know if others in the panel would like to comment.
I think from the European side, so in Germany and from other European funds, so there is no copyright, but we are obliged to acknowledge the funding. So in every paper at whatever level, so we have to give the number of the grant number in the acknowledgement. So that's how they track back. So the product.
In Canada, similar.
Yeah.
All right, that I think that will leave us about 10 minutes for closing remarks. So I'm just going to say a few words before we disperse. Remember, ability to prepare competitive grants is key for a strong research program. And that I noticed most of the workshop participants are young, which means you probably don't have the experience in preparing competitive grant proposals. We hope you have learned important tricks during this two-day workshop, sharpen your skills in grant writing, and secure a grant. We at the Alliance for Research, Innovation, and Education, AfRIE, believe in the concept of training the trainers, and we hope you will support faculty and researchers at your institutions to prepare fundable proposals. Just to reemphasize what Dr. Jonas said yesterday, one of the goals of the Alliance for Research, Innovation, and Education is to strengthen research capabilities in Ethiopia by organizing short-term training programs. Currently, we partner with Bahardar University. We will include other universities in Ethiopia as we get stronger. We also have a plan to link experts with researchers in Ethiopia, either to serve as mentors and or collaborate on research projects. But again, right now, we're just a young organization, so we just want to test the water first by collaborating with Bahardar University. Hopefully, we will include others in the near future. AfRIE relies on its members to achieve its goals, supporting higher education institutions and research centers in Ethiopia. We are very grateful to the wonderful people who gave the presentations today and yesterday and today at the grant writing workshop. Dr. Yosef Bayena, Dr. Daniel Ngobahari, Dr. Tasfai Wubat, Dr. Shekau Mangistia. He's not, I didn't hear him, but he's in Ethiopia, but he has supported us a lot for their time and for sharing their experiences. These are also the people who always step forward whenever AfRIE needs help, and we're very grateful for their support. I would also like to thank the University of Northern Iowa, of course, for hosting the virtual workshop, as I mentioned yesterday. Rick Seeley, the technology person here at the Learning Technologies, Educational Technology and Media Services of UNI, did a great job in setting up the Zoom and YouTube for us for the workshop, and we're very grateful for that. I thank Bardar University for our partnership, and also for announcing the workshop to many universities in Ethiopia, especially Dr. Freo Tegenye, Dr. Tasfai Shfarao, Dr. Zodu Emuru, Dr. Manindanta Murgeda. They announced this information to a lot of universities, and that's why we get a lot of people registered. We contacted also a couple of the leadership in other universities in Ethiopia directly. Dr. Tasfai Baye did that, and a couple of others, other AfRIE members did that. And we thank them also for spreading the word to their faculty and staff in their respective universities in Ethiopia. Of course, I should not forget the AfRIE team, Dr. Tasfai Baye, Mersha, Dr. Jonas Gizau, Dr. Yualem Abibi, Dr. Kaseng Tekle Sadik, and of course I have to also thank myself as a member of the team for the hard work in planning and executing the workshop, as well as for most of them for presenting at the workshop as well. We will share the slides and the videos. We will send email for the link. Most likely we will have the videos and the slides on a Google Drive, so you can get a link where you can actually download those documents. And as I mentioned earlier, we will leave the YouTube video for a few days unless something bad happens, okay? So you can watch those online as well. Finally, and very important, we will need your feedback, and this will help us to plan our future training workshops. I will send an email with a link. Please complete the short survey. It will take just a few minutes, less than maybe 3 minutes of your time. So again, please complete that. One of the, probably the workshops we're kind of thinking about is preparing maybe a day, like a few hours of workshop on manuscript writing. So again, if you are interested, have this in mind, and also tell your friends, your colleagues that this will be coming up in the next few months. And when we advertise it, you will be able to sign up for that. And with that, thank you very much, everybody, for attending the workshop. And
can I say one thing?
Sure.
Many people have been asking about the possibility of getting a certificate. Is this something you can say anything, or are you thinking about it? At least because just so that
we are talking about this. Right now, we're kind of debating whether AfRIE can actually give the certificate because this is a legal, I think it may have some legal issues. So we're talking about this. Another possibility would be maybe Bardar University might be able to provide that. So we're going to have to, we're not sure what to do. Okay, but we're talking about this. The AfRIE team will meet us soon and kind of make a decision on this.
Thank you.
Yeah, we posted. Yeah, we have already posted the answer for that. While we are discussing, we will come up with some sort of solution to everyone.
Yeah, I just wanted people to know that we're not ignoring them because they have been writing.
Yeah. Thank you.
So one last point, Dr. Laun, Dr. Ualam would like to have the discussion after this. If anyone interested in natural science, STEM related, he posted. We posted on the chat the link for a different Zoom. So those of you are asking about natural science and the STEM, we can after this meeting you can connect to the other link. Before we close it, you may need to copy that link. That's it. Maybe you can continue to learn. Or
I just copy and pasted it again. I just need to talk to the natural sciences group from the different universities where things are and what can be done. So if you are interested in the discussion, it's not going to be long, just for a couple of minutes. You will tell me and I will discuss about your institution. Please join on the other link. The reason I have the other link is so that I can control it. I will be hosting so we can have polls, things like that. That's the reason.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
And
by the way, there were a lot of other questions, but I think we're running out of time. That's why we couldn't address all of them. It doesn't mean we're ignoring you guys, so please excuse us for that. So again, thank you, and see you, I think, in another workshop, hopefully.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.